I'm going to talk about Kratom and the approach, which is probably the best approach for most people, is less is more. Now I'm going to read off a blog I wrote just to keep my thoughts on track. So I've been using Kratom for almost 6 years now, with a 4-month break that I took a couple of years ago. And I just weaned down on my Kratom over a couple weeks, and then once I got down to taking 2 teaspoons, I cut cold turkey. Felt fine, pretty much no withdrawals. So in the last 5+ years, I've experimented with various methods and amounts of taking Kratom. I've learned a few things about Kratom over the years, and through my experience, I firmly believe less is more. However, there are some people who are an exception to this rule, and I'll talk about that later. There's obvious exceptions. For the first couple years, I used Kratom 4 to 5 times a day, and each dose was around 1 to 1.5 level teaspoons. I always leveled my teaspoons out so I knew how much I was taking. For a couple months this worked pretty good, but my tolerance was slowly building up even though I was rotating over a dozen different strands of high quality Kratom. I noticed that my last 2 doses started to feel flat, stale, sort of a burnt out feeling. Now, since I was taking that amount of Kratom, I kind of needed to take those last 2 doses just to uh, feel normal, I guess you could say. Now, I almost never took Kratom before bed, like a few hours before bed, just to give my receptors a break, and because I've always had trouble falling asleep. Even as a kid, it would take about an hour to fall asleep. I'd wake up like 15, 20 times a night, and I didn't know that that was not normal. But that amount of Kratom actually did make it harder to fall asleep and stay asleep. Once in a while, Kratom did help me if my mind was racing, and that was the reason I couldn't fall asleep. But during that time when I was letting the Kratom wear off before bed, I felt sort of a gloomy type of feeling, just slightly depressed, more than I would feel if I wasn't taking that much Kratom or Kratom at all. Now in the morning, I would wake up and I'd feel stiff, unmotivated, tired, and within the first 5 minutes I'd have to take Kratom just to get myself moving. And like I said, I'm going to stress that that's because I was taking too much Kratom, not because I was taking Kratom. Now, with the amount I take now, I can wake up and feel completely fine. So why was I taking so much Kratom? Part of the reason I was taking 4 to 5 doses was out of the thought that at least taking my 4th or 5th dose would make me feel better than not taking it. That's because my first 3 doses I was taking too much, at least for me. My body and mind became accustomed to taking Kratom for the energy for a workout, to do a better job at work, or just hanging out with friends. Kratom is great to help you be a little more social, especially if you're sort of introvert. Another reason that I was taking that much Kratom is because I read a blog where different Kratom users were taking a lot of Kratom and claimed their tolerance pretty much stayed the same, and it worked good for them. So I was hoping I could make it work for me. Of course, you first take Kratom and it's amazing. So I was hoping that I could figure out a way to feel good on Kratom all day. Now, eventually, I realized after a couple of years, okay, that's not reality, at least for me. So once I got that in my head, I wasn't taking Kratom when I felt a little bored or a little tired. So I began experimenting to figure out what works best for me. Lastly, at that time in my life, I needed to take more than I do now, just not quite as much as I was taking. I was sort of in a rut in my life, and I needed the extra push, the extra motivation to get me through and just get me out of this rut, and it did work. All right, so what does less is more look like practically for me? So now I take about 3 doses a day, and I have been doing this for around 3 years now. In the morning, I take around 1 level teaspoon. This is great to jumpstart my day, and it gets me moving, gets the day started right. Then around 3 o'clock, I'll take like 3/4 of a teaspoon, and this helps me finish out my day at work strong. Um, Now, sometimes I'll wait to take my second dose till like 5:30. That way it kicks in, around 6 o'clock when I'm training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Uh, and oh, one thing about that, so Kratom and exercise are extremely synergistic. Exercise is probably the best potentiator for Kratom you could ever try. So you'll find you'll only have to take about half as much Kratom as you normally would take when you're going for a run uh, or playing a sport, whatever you do. So if you haven't tried it, exercise and Kratom are the best combination. So then around 8:30 at night, I take about half to 3/4 a teaspoon of a red Kratom. Now this just helps me relax. Uh, Actually, that amount helps me fall asleep easier because my mind is more calm. Now this is basically what I take, how much I take about 5 days a week. So on my days off, when I'm not having to work, I'll get up and I feel fine. I might not take any Kratom till like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I feel fine, like I said, and it's because I'm not taking a bunch of Kratom the rest of the week. And on my days off, I usually only take like, 2 doses. Now, there's some days, obviously, you're going to have a day where you didn't sleep very good at all. I don't know, maybe you have some projects you have to get done and you're going to need more Kratom. So there are times that I'll take 4 to 5 doses and it works. The Kratom is potent pretty much every dose, and that's because I'm not taking 4 to 5 doses every day on a regular basis. So Kratom is more effective for me when my goal is to feel energized and pleasant rather than the goal of feeling amazing. Now, this also keeps my tolerance down. So I'll say that again. My goal with Kratom now is to feel energized and pleasant, to feel level rather than wanting to feel amazing with every dose. Some people should take more Kratom. Obviously, if you're using Kratom to get over a drug addiction, alcohol addiction, even cigarettes, Kratom is definitely a better choice than any of those addictions. Or if somebody has chronic pain. So, obviously, if you need to take a lot of Kratom for a back problem or whatever, then do what you gotta do. And, some people will say, oh, well, you're just switching, being dependent on one thing for another. Well, being dependent on Kratom is a lot better than being dependent on something like cigarettes. Now I'm going to list a couple benefits of the approach less is more. So number one, you feel more level and in a pleasant mood throughout your day instead of having ups and downs with your energy or your mood. You will start to be able to feel the Kratom on small doses, even as low as half a teaspoon, as long as you are buying quality Kratom. Now, overall, the Kratom just works better when you're taking less. It's potent and it works when you need it. The other thing is you can enjoy a meal without worrying about eating too much and not being able to feel your kratom. If you take too much kratom every day, after a few months you will need kratom just to feel normal. Now that's if you're taking a lot of kratom. You'll save money, that's obvious. Now this is the last one and probably the most important. Kratom will be a tool that will help you in life, but it will not be the only tool that you will lean on to improve your life. In conclusion, uh, so kratom is the only thing I've found that really works to give me energy and focus. Uh, you know, caffeine is alright, but it usually gives me jitters, and Adderall just makes me feel nervous and keeps me up pretty much all night. So with over 5 years of using kratom, I've found that using too much kratom nullifies the benefits. With my 4 month off, I realized for sure no kratom equaled more tired, grinding days. But the right amount really improved my life and improves my life to this day. So remember, it's easy to get carried away with kratom when you are fairly new to it, but the mindset of less is more can go a far way. So that's it.